Hello and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we combine alcohol and horror movies for your entertainment.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
Be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Today we are making a drinking game for Insidious Chapter 3. For this installment in the franchise, James Wan fully stepped away from writing and directing. This meant that it was Leigh Whannell's time to step up to the plate with not only writing, but also his directorial debut. Whannell also went on to direct Upgrade and The Invisible Man, so it is safe to say that he is a fairly competent director.
Insidious Chapter 3 is the first installment chronologically. This movie does not feature the Lambert family, as it instead focuses on a young girl named Quinn. After an accident where she barely survives, she starts to get haunted by a mysterious entity. The family, not being sure who to turn to, end up contacting Elise, Specs, and Tucker.
Just a bit of a forewarning, there may be mild spoilers within the drinking rules themselves, but nothing that'll really take you out of the movie if it is your first time watching Insidious Chapter 3. But without further ado, let's get right onto the drinking rules.
Yeah, of course, let's start with the first rule, which is, as always, death. We're going to keep including it until there isn't a death in a horror movie, which, who knows if that's ever going to happen. Anyways, that's 5 drinks on this one.
Yeah, a little bit less than the previous installment, only by 2. Last one had 7, this one has 5. So it's still kind of right on track with the previous drinking games, at least.
Yeah, I guess we're grasping a little bit at straws here, so it's deaths that are mentioned in the past is what we include.
Yes.
Technically, Quinn dies as well, but comes back to life. So there's a few things that we're kind of grasping at straws here, for sure, I believe.
Yeah, so you might end up taking a different amount of sips, but whatever. It's all up to you, really. Mm-hmm. Anyways, we'll move right along to rule number 2, which is whenever there's a scream, cry, or yell, you take a sip, and this gave us only 17 sips.
So that is without saying there's less than the previous entries. The previous entries, I think we were tied with 23, I believe.
Yeah, both of them had 23. So
6 less there.
Yeah. And I'd say lower than the average horror movie. I'd say 20, maybe average. I don't know. It's hard to say. This is only slightly lower than average, if anything.
Yeah. Now on to one of our more popular rules, I'd say, with a lot of drinking games. We have jump scares. Whenever there's a jump scare, you take a sip, and that came to a total of 16.
Yeah, it's not as much as the first one. I think more than the second one.
I believe it's more than the second.
I'd say they're still consistent with the jump scares in this franchise, and they're mostly effective, even if they do rely on it sometimes. But even without James Wan directing, like the jump scares are still there. Yeah. So I think it's just part of the franchise at this point.
They're still prevalent for sure.
Yeah. Now let's move on to rule number 4. It's whenever mom is talked about, and this gave us 9 sips.
So I guess the mom was the main reason that Quinn wanted to reach out to Elise and reach out to the dead in saying that. So she's the main person that made the plot go forward, and she's also the main person that could have prevented all this from happening to Quinn by just saying, hey, I'm alive, don't look for me.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's easier said than done, I think, because of other entities playing a role, getting in her way. But yeah, it's kind of the main storyline that we're following. There's a couple other side stories that we're also following, but this is the main one that they use in this chapter.
Let's move on to the next rule, which is whenever noise is coming from the roof or the walls, and this came to a total of 7 sips.
Yeah, it happens more at the beginning, I'd say. First act, probably partway into the second act as well. Not so much in the end, because we're actually seeing everything in the third act. It's actually in front of our face, rather than just
a demon knocking on a wall.
Yeah, we don't know what exactly it is in the beginning. Well, we don't know what it is. But yeah, it's a pretty obvious rule when you hear it. Moving on to the next rule, it's whenever Elise tries to reach out to the other side, and this gave us 8 sips.
I think it was a unique take that Elise didn't necessarily want to reach out because she had some past trauma with Bride in Black, how that was haunting her, wanting to kill her.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit interesting. It made her want to avoid reaching out, yet she ends up doing it in the movie 8 times.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. We wouldn't have included this rule if she didn't do it, but I liked hearing about her history of, why she was afraid to go and reach out anymore and kind of retired from the business, even though she clearly didn't.
Moving forward to our next rule. Rule number 7 is whenever you see an entity, and that came to a total of 30 sips.
Yeah, the least in the franchise so far, but only by one. The second one had 31, this one has 30, so it's basically the same as the second one. Another hard hitter, probably the hardest one in this drinking game.
Yes, definitely.
But anyways, we'll move on to a new rule for this drinking game. It's whenever Quinn is injured, gets attacked, or inflicts pain on somebody else. And this gave us 9 sips in this drinking game.
Yeah, one scene in particular, she hurts herself and attacks 3 other people.
Yeah.
So in saying that, one scene almost was half of it, but it still happens a good chunk of times throughout the movie.
Yeah, she gets randomly hurt in a lot of instances or attacked in some way. It doesn't happen, consistently back to back, but it happens throughout the entire movie randomly.
Yeah,
so it was worth including. It's something to watch out for, I guess.
Certainly. I guess that would be in 5 different scenes. On to the second last rule, we have a returning rule, which is whenever the exterior of a house is shown, and that's a total of 8 sips.
Yeah, it's, we decided to bring it back. It's, of course, the least in the franchise up to this point, and probably a lot to do with James Wan not directing again. But it's still there, and we decided to include it, so yeah. But we'll move right along to the final rule for this drinking game, and that is Quinn's schooling is mentioned or referenced, and that gave us 6 sips.
It goes without saying, of course, that this is a little bit of a front-loaded rule. This happens a lot at the beginning, not so much at the end.
I think there might be one instance at the very, very end where it is mentioned, but it's her acting school, right? Like theater school, to be specific. So, yeah, it's just something to build on Quinn as a character, I think.
So if she says her lines, or if she mentions, I'm not going to go into school. I mean, anything along those lines, because we know she's going to acting school, so if we see her rehearsing her lines, that's going to count for a drink. Speaking of drinks, we have the total number for you, and that came to 115, which is the equivalent to drinking just under 4 standard 12-ounce cans if you include our 30 sip per can scale.
Yeah, so it's easier than the previous 2 installments for sure, almost by more than a full drink, actually. And if you considered the supernatural entity rule not being there, that's a full can in itself, so it'd be like 3 drinks without that. So it is on the lower end. That rule helps, pad the results and give us more drinks. But it's a little bit on the easier side. Still not super easy, mostly because of that rule. Yeah,
it's definitely quite a bit easier than the other 2. I'd say by a drink and a half almost. So, again, one of the easier ones. If you were to watch any one of the Insidious movie and you didn't want to drink all that much, this might be the one for you.
Maybe.
But then again, if you just want to have a good time and watch the first one, you can do that with some water as well.
And yeah, mentioning the first drinking game, or the first movie rather, we did make drinking games for the first and second Insidious up to this point, and now Chapter 3 right now. So we do have a playlist here with all the drinking games. Go click on that if you want to see the other ones. But with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our drinking game on Insidious Chapter 3. If you end up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any other feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below.
Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out as we wrap things up next week with the 4th and 5th installments for the franchise. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying, Cheers to Fears.